Developing overnight, women and men from all across the country flood the streets to take a stand against President Donald Trump. We'll tell you what message protesters wanted to get across. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Cameron, and good morning, Mid-Michigan. Fog is a major issue across Mid-Michigan this morning. We'll talk about when we can finally see better visibility coming up in your first 1-5 hour-by-hour forecast.
And we're going to start winning again, and you're going to be leading the charge.
Following his inauguration, President Donald Trump got to work. We'll tell you what the new president did in his first full day in office. And students and engineers are testing competing pod designs in what could be the new way we travel in the future. It's time to wake up in Michigan. It is Sunday, January 22nd.
Live and local with coverage you can count on. This is WNEM TV5 Wake Up.
And good morning to you. I'm Cameron Whittle. We thank you for joining us on a Sunday morning. I'm here with meteorologist Dan Drew in the First Warn 5 Weather Center. And the big story today is a lot of fog out there.
Yeah, no doubt about that. In fact, everybody dealing with this, and you really can't see too much out there. Here's a look at what we've got going on in downtown Flint, because, oh my goodness, it is very foggy out. You can hardly see the road, if at all. And if it wasn't for those lights, I'm sure you wouldn't be able to see it at all. So please use caution out there this morning. Now a look at our US 10 camera shows you pretty much the same thing. We can't see US 10 and we can barely see the ground in front of that. So please use a little bit of caution out there this morning. That's going to be our major story for today. Give yourself some extra time. Turn on the headlights, especially now that we are starting to get into the daylight hours, especially if you have those automatic lights, because they won't necessarily come on if they think it's daytime. So please turn on those low beams, not the high beams. The high beams just reflect the light back in your face. Now, it's going to be unseasonably mild into the rest of this week, so those temperatures are something we're going to keep an eye on as well. Now, here's a look at our fog tracker. We're looking at visibility less than a half a mile in most areas. In fact, Flint, there's no visibility, so please be careful out there. We're looking at a 1/10 of a mile visibility in Saginaw, and everybody right now covered under dense fog advisory until at least noon. That could be extended, so we're keeping a close eye on that as well. We'll talk about when we can finally see those skies clear up just a little bit coming up in your first 1-5 7-day forecast. Cameron?
Okay, Dan, thank you. We are following breaking news from overnight. At least 32 people were killed and dozens more injured in a train derailment. An overnight passenger train derailed in southern India. This is the latest accident to hit the country's massive disaster-prone rail network. 7 coaches were thrown off the tracks around midnight. We'll continue to bring you more information as it comes into the continuous news center. Again, at least 32 people were killed and dozens injured in a train derailment in southern India. Also developing overnight, a sea of protesters and pink hats and signs with creative slogans supporting women's issues filled streets in the nation's capital. Some say they came out to show that love trumps hate, while others used the opportunity to criticize President Trump a day after he was sworn into office.
I think it's bringing awareness. It's showing that, like, hey, remember Trump, like you just said, that you care about everybody and that, you know, all of our rights are important. So now put your money where your mouth is.
An estimated 500,000 people showed up in D.C. yesterday to march. Speakers and entertainers got the crowd fired up before their march down Constitution Avenue.
We want the best for all Americans. No hate, no bigotry, no Muslim registry.
Hillary Clinton tweeted saying, "Thanks for standing and speaking and marching for our women's values. Important as ever. I truly believe we are always stronger together." The Women's March was bigger than expected. In fact, it went global. In New York, large crowds marched from the United Nations toward Trump Tower, but were blocked off at Fifth Avenue. And in Chicago, the march was canceled when organizers saw crowds swell from their original projections of 22,000 to more than 150,000 participants. People in the crowds hoped to start a movement to have their voices heard. The Women's March began in Washington and spread to other cities around the world. Coming up in our next half hour, we'll tell you what protesters had to say right here in Michigan. On his first full day in office, President Donald Trump toured CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. The president has often criticized the U.S. intelligence community, but praised it yesterday. Earlier this month, President Trump questioned the intelligence community's conclusion that Russia interfered with the U.S. presidential election. But now he denies ever being upset and is blaming the media.
They sort of made it sound like I had a feud with the intelligence community. And I just want to let you know, the reason you're number one stop, it is exactly the opposite.
President Trump is set to welcome United Kingdom Prime Minister Theresa May at the White House this week, one of the first foreign leaders to meet with the president after the inauguration. They are expected to talk about a Brexit post-trade deal. And count on TV5 to bring you complete coverage of President Trump's busy first full day in the White House. We'll have that at our next half hour. New this morning, former First Lady Barbara Bush could be released from the hospital as early as today. That's according to a spokesman for her husband, former President George H.W. Bush. Both Mr. Bush and Mrs. Bush are being treated at the same hospital in Houston. The former First Lady was admitted for bronchitis, while her husband is being treated for a respiratory issue related to pneumonia. The spokesman says Mr. Bush will remain in the ICU for observation for several more days. Developing this morning, police are asking witnesses to come forward after a shooting that left 5 people wounded. They say a 6-year-old boy and 4 adults were shot in Boynton Beach, Florida. Yesterday afternoon, all victims were later released to the hospital. They are expected to survive. Investigators recovered at least a dozen shell casings at the shooting scene outside of a private home. They are now looking for a 4-door sedan with dark tint. Police call the investigation extremely active and say they are receiving conflicting information about what happened. Also developing this morning, the water crisis in Flint and a massive sinkhole in Metro Detroit have exposed flaws in aging underground pipes that for the most part are out of sight and out of mind. But a new analysis out of Lansing shows major infrastructure upgrades are unlikely anytime soon. Governor Snyder is pushing for all of the public and private revenue sources to be considered, but the GOP-led legislature is not expected to support higher taxes or fees this more than 1 year after increasing fuel and vehicle registration taxes and a road funding plan. For now, Snyder is focusing on assessment management, a practice not typically used for water or sewer systems. Students and engineers gathered this week to test what could be the way we travel in the future.
It's your morning talker.
The SpaceX company in California is running a competition that involves what is known as a Hyperloop tube.
The goal was to design a pod that can carry 20 people through the tube at the speed of sound.
About 100 engineered teams are gathering together to bring their designs, but only 30 of them will be picked to move on.
Designers will try out their pods at a test track in Hawthorne, California this weekend.
It sounds pretty fast, so my question is, if you're going the speed of light, can you still have a cup of coffee while you're sitting in this tube?
Well, I wouldn't try and drink it as they try to accelerate. That's when you're going to have the problem.
All right. Well, I don't know how that's going to work, but got to have my morning coffee.
I get it.
All right. Thank you, Dan. TV5 News Time is 8:08. A new warning has been issued by law enforcement after a number of overdoses in a major Michigan city. Find out what you need to know about this drug circulating through the state. President Donald Trump's inauguration cake controversy turns out to have many layers. We'll tell you how this rising cake controversy appeared to deflate. Plus, one of North America's top snow sculpting events kicks off this week. We'll show you when Snowfest is set to begin.